Hello everyone and welcome to SwitchUp. Today we've got one of our multi-review videos for you. We've got 4 games here to go through, all of which came out in the last couple of months, and we either just didn't have the time to review them or felt they weren't games that necessarily needed a full review of their own. The 4 games in question are the Hong Kong Massacre, Fatal Fury First Contact, Space Invaders Forever and Pure Pool. So with all that said then, let's get started. The Hong Kong Massacre is a top-down shooter, very similar in gameplay style to the Hotline Miami games, and sees you making your way through the rooms of a building, having to take out a host of enemies as you find them. One shot will take them down, but getting hit yourself will mean instant death for you too. The story is told via small dramatic cutscenes and through an interview with your character, a police officer and his boss that record the events of the game. Levels are then split into the times that certain events happened, starting 4 days in the past and moving up to the present day. It's a clever and quite stylish way to intersplice the story and gameplay. When playing, you move with the left stick, aiming with the right stick and pressing ZR to shoot. You can perform a dive mechanic with a press of the R button, and you are invulnerable to enemy bullets whilst doing this, and you also have a limited slow motion move. This depletes a bar at the bottom of the screen, although it will refill after a short while. You activate this by holding down ZL. The controls are fully customizable, and whilst I found the default setting fine, I did need to put the aim sensitivity up a touch, finding it just a bit too slow by default. Clearing an area of enemies will complete the stage, and there are certain challenges assigned to each stage which will earn you stars should you complete them. They are earned for clearing the level in a set amount of time, or not using your slowdown mechanic, etc., and these stars can then be used to unlock more weapons or upgrade your existing weapon at the start of each level. The action itself is certainly satisfying. It feels great taking a couple of enemies out before they even knew you were there, taking their more powerful weapon and marching on through the stage. It's incredibly difficult and you will die a lot. It's made harder in my opinion than some of the games in the genre due to the lack of any sort of melee weapons. This may not bother everyone, some may like this all-out action approach, but I felt the lack of a quieter melee weapon hurt the gameplay a touch. A stealthy approach at times, mixed in with all the bullet-filled carnage, would have just made for a more satisfying experience for my personal taste. Moving on to a few negatives then, I felt that the hit detection was just slightly off at times. Certain objects that should have been solid and acted as cover, such as cars, could be walked straight through, and it also felt as if the camera was too close at times, meaning you couldn't see the enemies. Now, enemy placement was shown as an arrow on the screen at these times, but whilst you knew roughly where they were, you couldn't see whether they were aware of your presence most of the time until it was too late. The visuals seem to mix the stylised John Woo type action with a more grindhouse look in terms of the grainy cutscenes. There is a nice use of lighting in some of the levels, although as I mentioned earlier, the fact that what should be fully 3D objects can be walked straight through really does hurt the immersion as well as the gameplay. Music is high octane and also manages to set that revenge flick mood that the game is going for. The Hong Kong Massacre costs £17.99 and regional equivalents are on the screen as I speak. It will take up 4.1GB of your system's storage. For this price you are getting approximately 4 hours of playtime, although as always this depends on your skill level. Whilst I don't necessarily think the price is extortionate, it is on the expensive side, and this is exacerbated further by the fact that games like Mr. Shifty are cheaper, Ruiner and My Friend Pedro are about the same price, and the Hotline Miami collection is only £5 more. I feel it needed to be a bit more competitive in its pricing to distance itself from the competition. To conclude, the Hong Kong Massacre delivers exactly what it sets out to, over-the-top action with Hollywood-style set pieces in terms of its slow-mo mechanic, and it will present most people with a serious challenge. Whilst there are a few negatives that bring the experience down a tad, its pricing could be its biggest enemy as it moves out of impulse buy and into direct competition with other games in the genre, perhaps one where it's best to wait for a slight sale. The Hong Kong Massacre gets a SwitchUp score of 70%. Fatal Fury First Contact is a fighting game that released for the Neo Geo Pocket Color back in 1999 and was based on the arcade game Real Bout Fatal Fury 2. There are 11 characters to choose from initially, plus 2 unlockable characters, one of which I'm led to believe was new for this game. When it comes to the action, it has a simplified control scheme of 2 buttons for attacks and movement, including jumping assigned to the D-pad, as is standard for fighting games. Despite the 2-button scheme, there are still a fair amount of moves that can be performed, and I really liked that a digital version of the original instruction manual was included, which lists the moves for every character. The gameplay itself has a decent fluidity to it, bearing in mind the hardware it was designed for, although it can feel a little slow in movement, especially when jumping. There is just the arcade mode to compete in single play mode, as well as a local multiplayer mode which can be played with each player using a single Joy-Con, or in a split screen mode in handheld with the game playing vertically with a screen for each player. The graphics used a chibi look for the characters, as was the case with a few of the Pocket Fighters as far as I understand, and there are a few different stages to fight on, ranging from martial arts arenas to petrol stations. The music is chiptune based and fits the mood and tone of the stages well. You can change the filter used on screen, as well as choosing from a few different borders, and there is also a rewind feature included should you need to use it. Fatal Fury First Contact costs £7.19, €7 or $7.99, 12 Australian dollars or 10 Canadian dollars 57. It will take up just 147 megabytes of your system's storage. Now, in isolation, this price may not seem too bad, but when you consider that you can buy the full arcade versions of Fatal Fury, as well as many other classic SNK fighters, for a cheaper price, then it really does lose its luster. To conclude, Fatal Fury First Contact works very well for what it was meant to be, a handheld version of an arcade fighter, stripped down as you would expect, but not to the point where it really hurts the core gameplay. Its problem these days is that the platform it finds itself on also offers you the opportunity to purchase the full arcade versions for less money. Not a bad game by any means, and fans of it back in the day will enjoy it once again, I'm sure, but there are just better and cheaper options on the Switch. Fatal Fury First Contact gets a SwitchUp score of 67%. Space Invaders Forever includes 3 games based on the classic arcade game from back in 1978. The 3 games included are Space Invaders Extreme, Space Invaders Gigamax 4SE, and Arkanoid vs Space Invaders. Space Invaders Extreme originally released for the Nintendo DS back in 2008 and is a souped up version of the original, similar to what Pac-Man Championship Edition did with the original Pac-Man game some years later. Each stage is made up of a set of short screens full of invaders. In line with the original, you control a ship at the bottom of the screen as the invaders move from side to side, making their way down towards you. However, this time shooting 4 of the same coloured invader in a row will see a power-up drop, such as the multi-shot for shooting 4 greens or the powerful laser for shooting 4 blues. These mix the gameplay tremendously and will see you tearing into the invaders, clearing screens at pace. And the pace of this game is what makes it so much fun. It's such an intense experience as you swap between power-ups and encounter new types of invaders, differing in size or with certain abilities. Shooting the flying saucer at the top will earn you a chance at a bonus game, and these get really tricky as you go further into it, but will grant you a huge score increase if you are successful. The final screen of a stage is a boss fight against a giant invader, and again, these will have a trick to beating them, making them tough and quite clever at the same time. Getting a big score is important, as getting an A rank on a level will allow you to choose your path on the stage select screen. Anything less and you will be taken towards the easier setting. This game is fantastic, making a 30-year-old game as the original was back in 2008 feel brand new, and it feels just as fresh what is now a further 13 years on. Space Invaders Gigamax 4SE uses the familiar graphical style of the original but quadruples the threat, whilst also allowing 4 people to take on said threat simultaneously. Again, boss battles are included, and these will need all players to pull their weight for success to be achieved. Whilst this game is fun, it does feel as if it needs the full quota of 4 players to get the most out of it. I only managed to try with 2 and it didn't really feel as satisfying this way. What is quite strange though is how the Arkanoid game is treated as its own game and actually has its own thumbnail on your Switch home screen. This itself isn't the strange part, as a few games have done this, but it's the point that the game doesn't actually tell you this. The second thumbnail doesn't appear straight away, and therefore I assumed that maybe I had to unlock this 3rd game and spent a good hour trying to get high scores in the other games, hoping to do just that. I eventually had to read online where it was I could find it. Then when loading it up, I was greeted to everything being sideways, as you can only actually play this game vertically in handheld mode using the touchscreen. Now I will say that the touchscreen controls are excellent, but to not give the option to use a controller and play in docked mode is quite odd, and why they made it all so cryptic I'll never know. With all that said, the game itself is a lot of fun, with the controls feeling better than any version of Arkanoid or any such clone that I've played in a long time. All three games use a variation of the classic Space Invaders sprite work, with Gigamax staying the most faithful and the other two using a few techniques such as colour or flashing lights to modernise the look without making it unrecognisable from its source material. The music has that flow to it that certain games manage to achieve. That kind of rhythmic flow where the music almost pulses through the gameplay to the point where it feels choreographed and quite deliberate. Space Invaders Forever costs £24.99, and again regional equivalents are on your screen right now, and it will take up 1GB of your system's storage. Now the biggest issue with this is that Japan recently received a Space Invaders collection for the Switch, the Invincible collection, that had a total of 11 games, making this one seem quite paltry in comparison. To be fair, Extreme is a great inclusion, and Arkanoid is different enough to keep things fresh, plus Gigamax gives a multiplayer edge if you can find a full quota. There should have been more games included though, there's no two ways about that. I mean, at the very least include the original as a marker of how the other games change up the classic formula. To conclude, Space Invaders Forever is difficult to judge. On the surface, a fairly high price and a superior release in another region make this seem a very hard sell. But once you've paid your money, and look for the cheaper physical release by the way, and you are playing Extreme, it's hard not to forget all that and just smile at the manic simplicity of what's in front of you. Fans of the series will enjoy it, provided they haven't already imported the Invincible collection from elsewhere. Space Invaders Forever gets a SwitchUp score of 75%. And finally, Pure Paul, a game that originally came out back in 2014 and is developed by Vufu Studios. It includes the 8 and 9 ball variations of the game, as well as also including modes such as Killer and Accumulator. It even includes a snooker game mode. All of these game modes can be played in quick game, local or online multiplayer, or you can attempt 8 ball, 9 ball or snooker in a career mode. As well as this, there are a number of challenges such as Perfect Potter or Speed Pot to try your hand at. The career mode sees you taking on opponents in order to move up the ranks from the amateur circuit through to the master circuit. Each match gives you a set of objectives to try and achieve, such as winning without committing a foul, and achieving these will earn you stars that then open up further challenges. There are also accolades that you can earn, a bit like achievements, although you can earn the same one more than once, and these will help you earn XP and level up. And doing so will see you unlocking a number of cosmetics such as new cues. The AI is very good for the most part, although you will sometimes get an amateur opponent pull off a complete master blaster of a shot, defying their skill level completely, but it's definitely a more gradual incline in difficulty than found in something like Snooker 19, as good as that game is. I mentioned the multiplayer earlier, and as well as playing locally, there is an online mode, and it's one that includes crossplay. As good as this sounds, the problem is there is just no one playing at the minute, and it's very hard to find a match. There is though a feature called DNA. This is basically where the game will make note of some of the features of your game, such as whether you use spin often, go for easy pots first, etc, and will then create a virtual version of you that friends can play against when you are not online, and of course vice versa. Control wise, things are kept simple but feel intuitive and natural at the same time. You move your aim for where you want to hit the ball with the left stick, holding down A and then moving the stick further to refine your aim. And you can also get a better view of the table at this point by holding down Y to stand up and moving the left stick to walk around. When you are ready to go, pulling back and then pressing forward on the right stick will cause the cue to strike with the power used on the stick replicated in your shot. The forward motion can feel a little awkward at times, with the Joy-Con stick almost feeling a little bit too small to make the movement as smooth as you would like. It does feel better with a Pro controller, which may well impact people playing exclusively in handheld mode, such as those that own a Switch Lite. I do want to emphasise though, it's not a big deal and you will get used to it. You can apply spin by holding down the B button when lining up your shot, and when playing in handheld mode you can also use the touchscreen, and this may eradicate the issue I mentioned just now with those Joy-Con sticks. The ball physics really do feel great, and this adds a huge amount to the experience. Talking of adding to the experience, the visuals look pretty stunning, with the tables themselves looking great and the backgrounds replicating a trendy bar, with the other patrons enjoying their night out in the distance. Something that isn't quite as good though is the implementation of the menu system, which is just a little clunky and not the easiest to navigate. The music is mostly jazz, which certainly fits the background. Whether it fits a game of pool itself, I don't quite know to be honest, but it's all done so well that I didn't really feel it mattered. Pure pool costs £12.49, again regional equivalents are on the screen right now, and this is a very fair price for the number of play options, and it's just a shame that the online is so sparse. Fans of pool will most certainly get their money's worth though, especially if you have a few friends that own the game, as you can set up your own leagues as well as part of the gameplay options. To conclude, Pure Pool holds up incredibly well 7 years after it was originally released. The ball physics are very good and the AI is sound enough, bar the occasional moment of disbelief in some of the shots, but I've yet to play a game like this that doesn't suffer from this to some extent. If you love pool, this is the best option on the Switch and definitely worth considering. Pure Pool gets a SwitchUp score of 83%. So there you have it, 4 reviews for you. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please do remember to leave a like if you did. It was a bit of a beast to put together, I've got to admit. Have you picked any of these games up, and if so, are you enjoying them? Please do let us know in the comment section below. A quick thank you to our Patreons as always for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, stay safe of course, and until next time, happy gaming.
Rate up. Rate up. Rate up. Rate up. Rate up. Rate up. Round start.